Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Matt Mangriotis from Cambium Networks. We're going to do a webinar today about cnRanger, the latest product offering in the point-to-multipoint space from Cambium. We're going to give it a few minutes just to make sure everyone has a chance to join. Looks like we have a fair number of attendees already, but I will give it about a minute or two, and then I'll get started. We've got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about the product and then also how to order it. Ordering is open and we will be shipping in very shortly. So again, I'll start in just a minute. All right, good morning. Why don't we get going? My name is Matt Mangriotis. I'm a product manager with the Cambium Networks product line management team. Today we're going to talk about cnRanger. cnRanger is the latest offering from Cambium in the point-to-multipoint space, and it utilizes LTE protocol, which is new to us, but presents some advantages. So let's talk about Ranger. If you have questions, any questions at all, feel free to type them into the question box in the chat box in the webinar, the GoToWebinar console, and I'll answer them if I can during the presentation, and if not, I'll make sure we do a Q&A session at the end. I'm going to cover both the product overview, what we usually call the sales guide, as well as the ordering guide. I'm going to cover a little bit about what parts are available and that sort of thing. And this will all get posted to our forum, as well as a copy of the slides so that you can refer to them later if necessary. So thanks for joining, and let's get started. So why does someone want to talk about LTE? There's a lot of reasons that folks need different solutions for different types of problems. As you're starting out as a WISP, generally this product, as many of our products, is targeted towards the service provider market, the wireless internet service provider market, or WISP market. As you're starting out, the important thing is to be able to reach customers. That's always important, but even as you're growing from nothing, the most important thing would be to connect your clients. So near and non-line of sight performance is really the main requirement in certain areas. And LTE protocols are just frankly better at coverage and range than some of the other protocols that exist out there. It's really important to reach those customers. So as you're small, really the primary reason would be to get to those customers. As you're growing, cash flow becomes a very important piece of the business, and having an inexpensive option for the CPE or this SM device could become the paramount thing within your business to keep that cash flow going. And as you get bigger, and maybe you're investor driven at this point, rather than a private owner, a lot of investors have heard of industry standard protocols and industry standard technologies like LTE, and maybe don't want to be tied to a single vendor. So then LTE becomes more attractive from that sense, in that the investors are more likely to invest if they have a reasonable ecosystem of products around them, of which LTE is a part. So our perspective on this whole issue is that we're going to adopt this industry standard to a fixed wireless solution. We're not reinventing anything. We're not creating LTE on a FPGA or anything like that. We're really just adapting LTE chipsets to a fixed wireless built, purpose-built fixed wireless solution. And that'll enable us to really take advantage of all of the things that the protocol brings to the table, which really helped with that range and coverage, as well as the signal strength, OFDMA capabilities, some really advanced features in terms of carrier aggregation, license-assisted aggregation, all kinds of really cool features that come along with the chipset. So existing LTE solutions in the space today, a lot of them are very complex. So there's two ways you can go. You can go to the very high cost, high complexity systems, which are designed for the mobile solution area and brought down to the fixed. But again, complex, costly, not real friendly towards the service providers. Or you can go the other route and go with the inexpensive solutions that are claiming to be LTE protocol, but very inexpensive. And these things are just not quite cooked, not quite ready. They just feel a little immature. So what are we going to do? We're going to remove the cost and complexity, yet exploit those air interface features that we talked about a little bit. In the 2.5 gigahertz range, which is the first frequency that this product will be available in, it allows a higher power capability, and so we'll be able to take advantage of that and have a nice range and coverage. We're going to leverage our expertise in the outdoor design of the CPE itself. A lot of we've heard some issues from other competitive products that they're not really designed for outdoors. The SIM cards rot out and rust right away, and then have problems connecting. But in all of this, we're going to retain all those networking features and the operational ease of use that Cambium is known for. We're going to try and maintain this flat network. We're going to implement layer 2 solutions on top of this product so that it's an easier deployment and more like a network that the service providers are used to. We're calling this product cnRanger, as mentioned. It's kind of an homage to achieving those near and non-line of sight capabilities that perhaps have been a problem in the past. So we're really bringing that quality to the service provider space and making sure that we know we're doing it correctly. We're often not the first movers in any new space, but we know what we're doing, and we'll get it to the right place with quality. So again, we like to talk about the 450 product line as our flagship point-to-multipoint product, and we're often want to find the right tool for the job, and so we have multiple solutions. In the multipoint space, we have the ePMP solution, which is our lower cost solution, and then we have the flagship 450 product line, which is the highest capacity, scalability, and spectral efficiency of any product in the industry. It's a great solution all around, and in many cases will outperform anything that's out there, even many other LTE solutions. But we are bringing LTE to the table because it does do certain things very well, and one of those things is, again, range and coverage. In a typical LTE solution, we have a lot of complexity, and a lot of that complexity comes from the evolved packet core, or the core of the network, which can be super expensive and super complicated. It can incur recurring costs, yearly maintenance costs, management costs, all kinds of stuff. And there's a lot of components to that EPC. We have the MME, the HSS, the policy control server, the gateway, serving gateway, packet gateway. There's all kinds of different components to that EPC. And then you have the rest of the network, which is the RAN or the base station, and then the user equipment or the CPEs. And that's a traditional LTE solution, and what many of them are modeled after. But what Cambium's doing is really, it's just creating a simple fixed solution with parts that look very familiar if you're familiar with other PMP products. We have the eNode B, or the RAN, is consistent of now a baseband unit and a remote radio head. And that handles all of the functions of the back end as well, meaning the EPC itself is embedded. And so at every baseband unit, you'll have an embedded EPC, which basically takes care of all of the functions of that big core in every BBU. And so that we're simplifying the network by combining everything into one. So the BBU and RRH take care of all of the EPC functionality, and then the cnRanger subscriber module is really the other end, the customer end. So looking at the way it looks, in the 450 line, everything is in a single outdoor unit, but now we are splitting that outdoor unit. We're separating the baseband radio from the remote radio head, or the RF portion. So we have an 8x8 baseband radio, known as the BBU, and then the remote radio head we're launching with a 2x2 remote radio head. The baseband unit is capable of up to 8x8, so we can put up to four 2x2 radios, or an 8x8 radio on that, as noted in the illustration here. So the way it looks on the tower, you have a DC power and a CPRI fiber cable connected to each remote radio head, or each sector. And those fiber cables get connected via the fiber ports on the BBU. And then your BBU is attached to your data network, either via SFP or a copper port. And the reason we're doing the split architecture, it provides you a little bit of flexibility. You can actually start with one sector and then add as needed. It's frequency independent, meaning the BBU can be connected to any frequency of remote radio head that we come out with. At the beginning here, we're going to have a 2.5 gigahertz, as mentioned, which is the EBS band in the US. But we will launch a 3 gig variant before the end of the year. And then we're also, entertaining the idea of doing a 5 gigahertz. It's not on the roadmap today, but it could very well come in a future release. This provides us the flexibility to do different frequencies on the same BBU, as well as carrier aggregation and even license-assisted aggregation if we should have that available in the future. And then having it at the base of the tower, the BBU itself, it provides lower maintenance and operational costs. So as mentioned, first release has the 2.5 gigahertz band. It's TDD bands 38, 40, and 41. That's TD LTE bands. And then the second release towards the end of the year will cover the 3 gig range, and that's bands 42 and 43, and most importantly in the US, band 48, which is the CBRS band. So we will cover that with this product. Here's kind of a summary of all the specs of all the parts. I won't go through each and every line, just to say that it's a complete system we're delivering at launch here, with the baseband unit, the remote radio head, and the subscriber module. So all of those 3 radios together will provide you a complete solution. Quick flashing of the roadmap. Again, in June here, we got the initial release, and by the end of the year, we'll have the 3 gig radios and improving some of the software feature sets of the radios themselves. In the near future, we're expecting to do higher category of SM, meaning a Cat 6 SM with the 2 gig. We will also look to do a higher power RRH for 2 gig to provide even more range and coverage. And then in the little bit further future, we're going to add some really cool software features. The boxes in yellow, we're still evaluating what's going to go in there. So those aren't necessarily set in stone, but we like to have a plan of intent that we share with everyone, and then we gather feedback on this quite often. So if you have any feedback for the roadmap, what you'd like to see in a product like this, please, you can post it to the thread that will be posted on our community forum, or even send me email. A couple of notes I want to make as far as differentiators among competitive products in this space. Again, the simplicity of the embedded EPC can't be overstated. We believe that having this EPC embedded in the BBU is the way to go. It eliminates the need for a separate core. A lot of questions that come out are, will we engage or interoperate with an existing core? And the answer is yes, most likely in the future we can do that. At the launch, though, it's going to be kind of a closed Cambium system where we are expected to have Cambium on both ends, meaning the BBU end as well as the SM side. We can support other vendor SMs. We are 3GPP compatible, so we can do that. There is interoperability, but to take full advantage of all of the features, and including the embedded EPC and all of that kind of stuff, we want to make sure that it's a Cambium system on both ends. A couple other things to point out here. The SM transmit power. On the RSM, we're at 26 dBm transmit power, which will provide a little bit better. The standard calls for 23 dBm, which is what most SMs are out there. But ours is 26 to enable a little bit better uplink link budget, which may help because typically with LTE, the uplink is almost always the piece that's starved because really it's a mobile standard, so most of the data symbols and paths are slanted towards the downlink. So having a little bit higher power in the uplink might help maintain a little bit higher modulation and give you that little extra edge on the uplink. Optimize use of spectrum. I do want to point out that we are designing our own antenna. I'll cover this in the ordering section, but we are designing our own antenna that will help optimize the use of the spectrum and give you a little bit better spectral efficiency. This is unique to other solutions in the space as well. And then we mentioned layer 2. We will have the layer 2 capabilities embedded on this, and that's coming very shortly after launch. So just a couple of differentiators among what's out there and available today. It's an easy to use GUI. So it's going to look and feel a lot like the Maestro GUI or the Maestro interface. Very simple landing page, dashboard view to enable and get things going. It's a very simple configuration. You don't really need to know a whole lot about LTE. It's really all about just configuring the network settings and then importing the SIM. There is a SIM card that goes into the SM, but importing that SIM information is pretty simple, and then it's configured, and then it's all ready to go. So quite easy to do. Now, I'm going to go through the ordering guide, and again, I'm not going to stop on every single part number and talk about every single part number that there are, because we'd be here all day. However, I will go through a couple examples, and this will be available for reference on the forum, as I mentioned. So Link Planner will help you. It's not in Link Planner yet, but I believe we're slating this for the June release, so it'll be there when the equipment starts shipping. And going to Link Planner, it will help you generate a BOM. That's probably the easiest method to do if you don't have any access to anything else. Link Planner is probably the easiest way to get started with a BOM generation. Typical deployment, again, it's very simple. It's the remote radio head and antenna at the top of the tower. It's the baseband unit at the base of the tower, and then that's your AP installation, basically your access point installation. It's not very complex, except now that we have some power supplies that are required and some surge suppression, and we'll go through all that. So power supply options. They are DC powered. Every device on the base station side is DC powered. You can use a single power supply. We have a 120 watt power supply available, and you can connect one each, the BBU and the RRH if you want. You can buy the 240 watt power supply. These are all DIN rail mounted supplies. They're all pictured here. You can buy the 240 watt DIN rail mounted supply. That'll supply for the BBU and the remote radio heads, up to 2 of them. Now, if you want a complete site, you can go with the 480 watt supply, and then I'll do all the radios in that site at that site. So there's a number of different ways to go, depending on your needs. For the remote radio head installation, we have 2 antenna options at this point in time. We have a third-party antenna, which is made by MTI, Wireless Edge. It's a 65-degree sector, and that's pictured here. And we have, in addition to that, you'll need a mounting kit for the radio itself. And that mounting kit, I just copied the kind of the install guide pictogram that comes with that mounting kit. But so you'll need the antenna, the RRH mounting kit, and then supply jumper cables to connect that. It's N-type to N-type jumper cables. So that's one option. The other option for the remote radio head is to purchase the Cambium designed antenna, which is a wider antenna in terms of sector and very high front to back isolation. And this antenna also comes with mounting and jumpers to connect the radio. So it's while it is a little bit more expensive, You do get the more elegant mounting solution as well as the jumper cables included. So it's a very nice, easy installation, and in fact, it would be the recommended way to go if you're considering multi-sector deployments in the area, because it does, again, it's a little bit wider antenna path, and then it's designed for a 3-sector deployment, and it's able to do N=1 when we implement that in the software for the radio. So that's the remote radio head side. As far as cabling goes, there's a couple of cables you're going to need. We mentioned the DC power and the CPRI fiber cables. And so the fiber cables we have available in the price list, a 2-meter length, pre-terminated on both ends, which we would recommend to go from the radio head to a junction box of some kind. We are working on implementing or finding, pre-configured junction boxes with and without DC surge suppression, and for a single sector or a 4-sector site. So these are part numbers we've reserved. We don't have them all completely finalized yet. So there's no, we don't have them available for sale yet, but that's the plan, is to implement some solutions in the junction box space. So you can also supply your own if you can spec out a junction box that's appropriate. But what we do have at this time would be the 2-meter length pre-terminated fiber cable. The other option here is to just bypass a junction box and use terminate your own cable for the right length from the remote radio head to the BBU. The other piece that's noted here is the DC power cable. The DC power cable is, again, a 2-meter length cable, and one end that connects to the remote radio head has a bit of a specialized connector on it, which is why we wanted to create one of these cables to allow that connection to the remote radio heads. You don't have to go off and find this unique connector. So we have the 2-meter power cable as well that can go into a junction box again. So the cnRanger BBU has a GPS built in, but you may need an antenna to achieve that. We do sell the external GPS antenna available under this part number. That's a magnetic puck that you can put right outside the hut or what have you at the base of the tower to get GPS signal to that BBU. SFP modules. So you're going to need SFPs to connect both the data path from the RRH to the BBU, and that requires the SFP plus or 10 gig SFP, which is that part number that ends in L132 there. And you're going to need one at each end, meaning one in the RRH and one in the BBU for each sector. So you need 2 of those modules for each sector. The other one that's listed here, the 1 gig SFP, is only for the uplink and only if you want to use it. You don't need to, it's an option, right? So you can use either Ethernet copper out from the BBU, or you can use the 1 gig SFP. I do want to stress that it's required that you have the 10 gig SFP on the BBU to RRH connection, and that's because there's a lot of data that goes back and forth between those 2 devices, all of the internal data that goes back and forth. So it's required to have the 10 gig ports there. On the SM side, so again, very simple. On the SM side, there's 4 different models depending on where you are in the world. You can have just the power supply, and this is a little bit different than one of our 450 product line. The power supply is included with the radio. So on the SM, you get a power supply. I listed which power supply that is at the bottom there, but that's really only for spares if required. So the power supplies are included. And if you're in the US, you want the US line cord. That's the second model. If you're in the UK, you can get the UK line cord and so forth. And the EU line cord is the 4th one. Along with the SM, you're going to need a SIM module. And we sell the SIM modules in packs of 10 only. They're only sold in packs of 10, so you buy 10 at a time. And the part number is listed right there. So that's it on the SM side. So again, Link Planner will help develop a BOM for you. So I'm not going to go through all of the parts. I've covered kind of the different various steps there. All the parts are listed here. and we'll with list prices. There are extended warranties available. The standard warranty, as much like our PMP 450 product line, is now 3 years. So you get a 3-year standard warranty with purchase, and you can extend that for up to 2 additional years, depending on what you need. And so the extended warranties are listed here. So an example BOM, I just wanted to go through a couple examples so you know kind of what you're in for when you're thinking about various sites. So if I'm going to deploy a 3-sector site, and let's call it 27 SMs in the US, and I want to use that fiber uplink port, then this is the BOM that I would come up with, which includes the baseband unit, 3 remote radio heads, 3 antennas. The power supply, I'll buy the big power supply so I can cover the whole range of access point or base station needs. I'll buy 3 of each of those terminated cables to connect each sector, and I'll have 6 of those modules, the SFP modules, to connect 3 at the remote radio head site and 3 in the base station. And I am going to use the fiber uplink port, so I have 1 gig SFP there at the baseband unit to connect to the rest of my network. And I'll need a junction box of some kind. So if I want the one that has DC surge suppression, I'll buy that one and put everything into 1 junction box at the top of the tower. And then on the SM side, I had 27 SMs, and so I will need 27 SIM cards. So I'll buy 3 10-packs, and then I'll have a couple of SIM cards left over for expansion of my network as I go forward in time. And I will also need to provide the rest of the cabling that's required. So that's an example. And I have a second example we can go through as well. And this one, I'm using the third-party antenna outside of the US. I just said in Italy here. So this one is a little bit different in that I'm using the other antenna, so I need to add the mounting kit separately. And then I'll need N-type jumper cables as well. And I'm buying the EU version because I'm in the EU in Italy. So I think that's about it. And again, if you have any other questions about the part numbers and things, no problem. This presentation will be posted on the forum, and you can always post questions in that forum thread as well, and I'll answer them as best I can. So I hope that helped give you a little bit of an overview of the cnRanger solution. And I'm open for any questions at this point. I see there's a couple in there, so let me open that box. And I apologize if the audio is tough to hear. I'm remote today and trying to do this from a remote location. So the question about uplink modulation, it says it's 16 QAM modulation, and will there be support for 256 QAM modulation in the future? So yeah, that's based on the LTE standard. So in Cat4 devices, uplink is 16 QAM is the max. As you get more advanced in the LTE advanced standard, it does get to 64 QAM modulation in the uplink with Cat12, I believe. But we're following the LTE standards, so we are going to improve things with new hardware and new software updates, and things will change and get different as we move forward in time. But again, because this is a standards-based product, we're beholden to what the standards provide. And so LTE, we're starting at release 10, but we're going to advance through release 12 and have different category SMs as well. So we will be advancing this in the near future. Any other questions I can answer? I'll leave it open for 1 more minute. I don't see a whole lot coming in. So why don't we wrap up? Thank you for joining. And again, we'll post this and get it posted to the forum very shortly. Thanks again. Hope you learned something today. Thanks.